Glenn, the only son of single mother Megan, had built a thriving business and was happily married to the stunning Georgia. But when tragedy struck and he passed away, Megan's grief turned to fury as she rushed to the coffin, determined to uncover the truth. As she flung open the lid, what she discovered would leave everyone in disbelief. Glenn loved Georgia deeply. She was his first love, and they shared a strong connection. She supported him through good times and bad. It didn't matter to her that he had a successful business. She loved him for who he was. All he wanted was to spend his life with her. Their love story seemed perfect. Unfortunately, Glenn's mother, Megan, did not approve of Georgia. She told Glenn that Georgia seemed untrustworthy and shared a dream where Georgia took everything he had. Glenn was upset by this and explained how important Georgia was to him. He even planned to ask her to marry him. Megan disagreed and said she wouldn't support the marriage. This hurt Glenn, and he felt betrayed. He knew his mother meant well, but he couldn't leave Georgia. He decided to keep his relationship with her a secret. 2 months later, Glenn and Georgia got married, and Megan was not invited. He told her about the wedding only a week later, insisting that Georgia was the right choice for him. Even though Megan was upset about not being included, she realized she couldn't change his mind. She chose to forgive him and wished the couple a happy life together. Sadly, something terrifying would happen soon. Just 6 months after the wedding, Megan got the shock of her life when she was informed of Glenn's death. Georgia had called her, weeping uncontrollably as she struggled to pass on the tragic news. Megan's heart thudded loudly in her chest as she clutched the phone like a lifeline. She asked for details, wanting to know what had happened. Georgia, who couldn't control her emotions, was barely audible, so Megan couldn't make any sense of what she was saying. After the call, Megan was beside herself with grief. She couldn't believe her healthy son was dead, just like that. She immediately got into her car and drove for 4 long hours to his mansion in the city. When she arrived, she found Georgia there, looking disheveled and unkempt. Megan immediately demanded to see her son, but her request upset Georgia. She felt Glenn should be allowed to rest peacefully and not be bothered. However, Megan refused to reason with her. She wanted to see her son's body before she could accept the tragic truth. Within moments, the two women got into an argument, and Georgia angrily called security, asking them to throw Megan out of the mansion. Megan tried to struggle with them, but she was no match for their strength, so she was kicked out. From there, she hurried over to the hospital and was told that Glenn had been brought in critical condition. At her wits' end, Megan went to the morgue, where she learned that her son was indeed dead and in their custody. Unfortunately, she was told she couldn't see her son without written permission from Georgia. Feeling defeated, Megan left the morgue and headed to a hotel where she stayed the night. Her tears flowed uncontrollably as she couldn't make sense of the mystery surrounding her son's death. All she knew was that he was gone, but she had no clue how it had happened. Later that night, she was browsing online when she stumbled upon various articles about her son's death. Glenn was a popular figure, so Megan wasn't surprised that the news of his demise was all over the news websites. Yet none of them mentioned the cause of his death. They only stated that he had died due to undisclosed reasons. What shocked her even more was that Glenn had been dead for over 4 days before Georgia told her, raising even more suspicions. The air was thick with unanswered questions, and Megan was determined to uncover the truth behind her son's sudden and secretive passing. As she kept surfing the internet, Megan discovered that the date of the burial was already set for the next morning. This infuriated her greatly. Georgia was going ahead to bury her son without informing her. That night, Megan could barely sleep due to the rage pulsing through her veins. She was going to get answers, whether Georgia wanted her to or not. The following morning, Megan rushed to the cemetery where the burial would take place, as stated by the blogs. Unfortunately, the traffic was heavy, and she regretted not leaving the hotel earlier. Nevertheless, she pressed on and arrived just as they were preparing to lower the coffin into the freshly dug grave. The scene before her only fueled her determination to uncover the secrets. Surrounding her son's death, Megan's voice echoed with anger as she rushed towards the pallbearers. Everyone gazed at her, puzzled by her sudden arrival and scream. Security guards attempted to intervene, but she brushed them aside with determination and headed straight for the coffin. Without hesitation, she threw open the lid. A gasp escaped Megan's lips as she peered into the coffin, her mouth agape in shock. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she clutched her chest, overwhelmed with emotion. Glenn was undeniably lifeless, but something was terribly wrong with his body. It was covered in hives, his flesh swollen in several places, and his skin had an eerie purple color. As Megan stared at her son, she immediately knew the cause of his death. Glenn was allergic to bee venom. Back when he was a Boy Scout, he had been stung by a bee during a camping trip in the woods. It was so bad that he almost lost his life if not for the timely intervention of a doctor. Megan never forgot that day, and neither did Glenn. His body had swollen up in places, and he had been itching all over. Now, as she looked at his body, she could tell that what killed him was bee venom. She just couldn't understand how such a thing could happen though. Ever since the first incident, he had developed a phobia of woods and even trees. He lived in the heart of the city, so it was unlikely that a bee should have stung him there. Wasting no time, Megan called for an end to the funeral. There was something fishy about his death, and until she got to the bottom of it, there would be no burial. Georgia tried to continue with the proceedings but stopped when one of Glenn's close friends, a policeman, decided that indeed there was something suspicious about the entire situation. Glenn's body was returned to the morgue, and an autopsy was eventually conducted. The shocking truth was revealed. At the time of his death, Glenn had a small dose of bee venom in his bloodstream. However, given the amount of venom found in his body, it couldn't have come from a sting. The venom had been injected into his body. Someone had killed him. The policeman went to the hospital where Glenn was treated and discovered that Georgia had brought Glenn in when it was too late for the doctors to do anything. Megan told the police about how Georgia refused to allow her to see her son and even tried to bury him without her knowledge. This made Georgia the chief suspect in Glenn's murder. Georgia was immediately arrested and taken to the station for questioning. In a bid to curry favor, she decided to confess. She told them that she had indeed injected Glenn with the bee venom. She had given him sleeping pills, and while he was asleep, she carried out the despicable act. Georgia had also lied to the doctors, claiming that Glenn was attacked by a swarm of bees during a camping trip, so when he died, they simply wrote the cause of death as bee venom. Georgia knew that Megan wouldn't be easily fooled because she understood Glenn's fear of the woods. She realized there was no way Glenn would have gone into the woods, which is why Georgia didn't want Megan to see him. She feared it would ruin her plans. When asked why she did, Georgia admitted that she wanted to take over Glenn's company. With Glenn gone, she would have control and could do whatever she wanted. When Megan heard Georgia's confession, she fell to her knees and cried. She had known from the beginning that Georgia was trouble and regretted not stopping Glenn from marrying her. A week later, Megan held another funeral for Glenn, crying throughout the service until he was buried. A month later, Georgia was sentenced to life in prison for murder. Moving on from this terrible loss was difficult, but to honor Glenn, Megan started a charity in his name to help those in need. This helped her cope with her grief. 3 years after Glenn's death, Megan adopted a little boy who had been abandoned at birth. She named him Simon, the name Glenn had wanted for their first son, and devoted herself to giving him a loving life. Hopefully, time will heal Megan's pain, and she is grateful to have little Simon in her life. What are your thoughts on Megan's choice to adopt another child? We'd love to hear from you in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, share it, and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to hit the bell icon so you never miss an update from us. Thank you.